is here, it is a happy new year, we can say. And we are really happy to have you for this open house. And please, for your information and with your permission, we will be recording the session so that those who might not be able to join us can have access to the recording and we can revisit it to know what transpired during this important conversation. So if you are not comfortable with the session being recorded, feel free to let us know in the chat and we'll take measures to keep you safe in this digital world. We are very much happy to have you for this very important session, the open house, the first open house for 2023, which gives us the opportunity to launch RINGO Phase 2 strategy. You don't want to miss that, and we are very happy that you're here with us. I am Jim Chik Fomunjong. I work for the West Africa Civil Society Institute, which is based in Accra, and I am based in Yaoundé, Cameroon. It will be good to know who is here with us this morning, afternoon, or evening, and where you are joining us from. So please, kindly in the chat, do feel free to introduce yourself, your name, your organization, where you're joining us from, and why not? You can just let us know what the weather looks like out there. Here in Yaoundé, it's quite sunny and bright, and to me, that shows how promising our conversation this afternoon is going to be. And for your information, this discussion this afternoon is actually going to be in 3 languages: in English, in French, and in Spanish. To move to the language of your convenience, feel free to click on the interpretation icon and choose English if your language of preference is the English language, French if your language of preference is the French language, and the Spanish if your language of preference is the Spanish language. Donc, pour accéder à l'interprétation en direct, cliquez sur l'icône de l'interprétation et choisissez votre langue de préférence. Si c'est la langue française, bien vouloir cliquer sur FR pour suivre les discours en langue française. Et si c'est en espagnol, para acceder a la interpretación en directo, haga clic en el icono interpretación y selecciona su idioma preference, click on mute original audio. I hope I got that right, and if I didn't get that right, sorry. Our wonderful interpreters will actually do more justice to that. Wonderful colleagues, we are very happy to have you all here with us. Leah Rosendahl is joining us all the way from Copenhagen, and it's quite sunny over there like it is here in Yaoundé. We have Lucy from Comic Relief. Where are you joining us from, Lucy, at this particular moment? We know you can either be in Zambia, in Accra, in London, wherever you're joining us, just do let us know. We want to get a global feel because RINGO is all about actors within the civil society ecosystem across the globe. We have Manon, who is a freelance consultant from the Netherlands. Thank you very much for joining us for this very important conversation. We have Charlotte Schumann, all the way from Marseille. Charlotte, très enchanté d'être avec vous cet après-midi. We have David Winter, for the wonderful David Winter from Rios Partners, and of course a member of the RINGO core team all the way from Germany. It's good to be with you once again, David, as always. We have Rao from Oxford. Thank you all, colleagues. Keep on sharing your different locations and how the weather feels like, because we just want to know, as that gives us the tempo of what the world feels like at this particular moment. And this is none other than Nana Fajino connecting from Johannesburg today. It is good to be here with you, Nana, and I'm sure everyone is very happy to interact in this very convivial space that we are creating for civil society actors across the globe. And just to say, RINGO is being brought to you, of course, by the RINGO core team, Rios Partners, the West Africa Civil Society Institute, and of course, some wonderful actors within the civil society space, Jenny Richmond, Janet Maweo, Deborah, Sparkle, and we are all happy to have you here. It is always a delight, ladies and gentlemen, to be exchanging with you under the umbrella of the RINGO initiative. This particular session will take us the next close to 55 minutes. And of course, it is going to be an opportunity for us to interact and see what the next steps are for us. We had 2 wonderful years engaging with most of you. And of course, some are joining this ship at this moment. It is not yet late to join, and we are happy that you're joining at this time, because this is actually the moment when we are getting in the middle of the waters and our ship will be sailing across the wonderful tides. And we need you to be with us to ensure that we get a civil society ecosystem that is fair, equitable, and responsive to the needs of all within the sector. I will be inviting my wonderful colleague, Leslie, to just share with us what are some of the key insights that we'll be taking in the next step. We just get to know what is actually in store for us on this day. And please, we will be having an opportunity to share with everyone. And so if you will be speaking, kindly speak slowly. I hope I am doing that. Sometimes I really don't do that, but I'm sure our wonderful interpreters will be doing justice to make sure that I stay in line with this. And actually, for the open house of today, we are actually going to be looking back at what RINGO Phase 1 we collectively achieved as a team. It was actually a journey that spanned beyond 2020, between 2021 and 2022, and it will be good for those of us who have been along this journey to revisit what that meant for us. And for those who are joining, once again, we will just take us back memory lane to let us know what we went through. And of course, we will be looking forward, and that is why for those joining us for the first time, it is actually amazing to be with you today. We will be looking at the theory of change. What is that theory that we will be reflecting across together to ensure that it helps us get to the change we want? And of course, the RINGO core team, which of course many of us know or will be getting to know within this session, we have reflected on what are the guidelines that will take us through the next 2 years, 2023, 2024. And in that, we will provide you highlights of the strategy and what's in store for us in the coming 2 years. And of course, RINGO is all about you. It's more about you than it is about me. And that is why we really want to be engaged, to stay engaged, and to have you prompt us that you want to be engaged wherever you are, whether in Zambia or in Accra, whether in Egypt or in Malawi, whether in the Philippines or in Madagascar, wherever you are in the world, the USA, Canada, Copenhagen, feel free to get engaged. We want you to be part of this process. It is our process. Without you, RINGO will be valueless. But with you, we will make meaning out of this process that we have co-designed to ensure that it steers the change we want for ourselves. And we are just going to look a little bit about what RINGO is broadly and some key stats that emanated from the past 2 years of engagement. And talking about RINGO very briefly, it is actually a systems change initiative that seeks to ensure that together we reimagine the international non-governmental organization. And that is actually, RINGO stands for the acronym that represents that, reimagining the international non-governmental organizations, and it's a systems change initiative that seeks to transform global civil society. We mobilize cross-sectoral efforts, cross-sector actors to ensure that together we revolutionize, we redynamize, we make the civil society sector to really reflect our aspirations for an equitable civil society. And of course, it is being done by interrogating our very being, our very existence as international non-governmental organizations. The first 2 years really helped us to make strides in that regard in terms of our engagement. And of course, if you have been part of that process, of that journey in any way or the other, we applaud you, because it is thanks to you that we are where we are today. In the past 2 years, we organized 2 open house events that brought together 275 attendees. But what is most amazing about that? There were further engagements. And by the time that we went for the Learning Festival, the first Learning Festival we organized sometime November last year, we had 1,000 registrations. People expressing interest to want to be involved, to know more about what transpired. And over the 2 years, we had 47 actors engaging from the Global South, and many others, 45% from the Global North and 8% who participated in other countries that is really not their country of abode. Ladies and gentlemen, there is really a lot in store for us. And to get to know more about this wonderful initiative, permit me to invite Deborah Dunn. Most of us will know her, but for those who don't know her, she's actually been a wonderful fuel that has been making sure that this engine should keep moving, and that is why we are here today. Deborah, look at how I am delighted to have you. Please share with us, because many others are equally delighted to have you with us this afternoon. Deborah?
Great. I am so excited to be here, and I can't believe I'm here, actually. We've made it this far, and we're going ahead. I get to do the roundup of where we got to. There's lots of friends from the lab and some new people here. And just, this is all being recorded. We've had, I think, 450 people register, so it will be shared to a much wider group of people. So let me share my screen and quick slideshow. So where did we get to in the Ringo Lab? Really quickly, we came together actually as a core team in 2020, but overall we started in 2021, and it was really focused on shifting power, a lab. Well, it's about reimagining the INGOs. It was about strengthening, shifting power to national and local civil societies in response to all of those issues we're all familiar with that you don't need me to go into: race, power, gender, and so on. We started with 55 innovators in the system. They applied to be with us, and that was people who represented the system: Southern partners, funders, academics, networks, INGOs, and so on. And that grew when we got into the prototyping phase to about 95 members. Very importantly, we always intended to be cross-sectoral. These issues are not unique to development or humanitarian or environmental organizations. They cross the institutions. So we tried to be cross-sectoral. And the final key principle for those of you who weren't in the lab, and maybe to remind those of you who were, is getting into gear and just trying stuff out. We all spend a lot of time pulling our hair out saying, what's wrong with the system? We wanted to say, well, let's try something else. Reimagining by doing was our core principle. We had, this is roughly speaking the map of what we did in 2 years. We started with getting everyone together to know each other, figuring out what was wrong with the system, what wasn't making sense in our sense-making phase, designing some solutions and trying them out, ending with our Learning Festival in November. A quick summary of what the areas of inquiry looked at: everything from governance and accountability to resourcing, incentives, and solidarity. And it was, this is about, I know many of us here, certainly me, have been thinking about this stuff for 25 years. So why haven't things shifted? Why have we been whinging about it, and why haven't they shifted? And there were 4 broad areas about why the system was stuck. Resistance to change. It's down to us. It's down to our individual behavior sometimes, ego, and so on. Then that you extrapolate that, and then there's an overwhelming sense of Western superiority and lack of trust in the system. We don't trust those people. Obviously, the aid system generally plays into power and politics in the way in which it funds NGOs. And then this all plays out in our practices, our structures, our regulatory environment. There are perverse incentives in the system that means we haven't been able to shift power. We came up with 4 areas of possibility. I won't go into them because I want to get more time to tell you about the prototypes and where we got to, but redefine, redesign, remove, including some INGOs, and creating new opportunities. These slides will be shared with everyone at the end of this, by the way. Well, for those of you familiar with design thinking, we have hundreds and hundreds of how might we's. And they really open your door to thinking. They're quite exciting. You know, how might we design alternative models for financing INGOs? How might we create more equitable boards and governance systems? So all of these how might we's we came up with in order to do our design thinking and come up with our garden. I just wanted to share this one slide with you. For those of you who haven't done a 2-year intensive process online, this is how you do it. We worked on Mural and had these incredible brainstorming sessions that built our community and helped us think through the problems. This is just one Mural board of one workshop. We have many of these and we share them openly with people for those who want to see them, but that's how we did our thinking. So we came up with what we called our Ringo Garden. You know, what are the seeds that we want to be planting? And I just planted some lettuce seeds earlier this morning, so I love this analogy. And there are, broadly speaking, 4 categories of intervention. These are overlapping. They're not perfect. Some of the things that are in leadership and governance could equally be in solidarity and partnerships. But solidarity and partnerships, leadership and governance, accountability and impact, and resource flows were our categories of what prototypes we selected. And it's important to note that amongst the criteria were things like, well, we can just get on with it and try it. But also importantly, that they were that cross-sectoral. They were systemic. They were things that not one organization could fix on their own. And I think that's a really key distinguishing feature of the Ringo project. Collaboration is absolutely necessary. So a very quick summary of what the prototypes were and where they're at now and how we intend to take them forward. So the first one, risk and compliance. This is an issue anyone who's worked in the international sector will be familiar with. And it's that current system of passing risk down all the way through the supply chain from the donor to the INGO, compliance officer, and so on. And some of it is based in policy, if you think of anti-terrorism laws, for example. But others, it's just about procedural norms and expectations. Well, you think you have to do it, but maybe you don't. So what this prototyping team did was test out a brave conversation in the Philippines. And by using a system of trust-based negotiation, can they actually agree what is proportionate and necessary? A lot of lessons from that one prototype. And I'm pleased to say that the International Civil Society Center, ICSC, I hope you're here today, is taking this one forward and hoping to try it out in more context and normalize and mainstream that practice. Our language and communications prototype, I was on that team, was based on the assumption that language creates the conditions of decolonization. And we thought, you know, let's use AI, let's use the tools that are there. So the first part of that prototype has created, it's almost live, I promise, a search and replace software that will look at the pejorative or racist or neocolonial language and then offer up alternatives. So you'll be able to upload a document, have the document scanned, and those suggestions will come to the fore. We started out with a small group of words, and that will expand over time. That should be ready soon. And the second is just using the AI translation tools that are already available. And that's not just for French and Spanish. It's also for Luganda, which we did a trial in. It can enable people to be able to communicate in their own language and reducing this intermediary role of where English is dominant. Uganda National NGO Forum has been hosting that, and they will continue to host that and share it with all of us for wide-scale use and adaptation and feedback. In leadership and governance, although, as I said, this is also about resourcing, it's also about solidarity. The current system, INGOs generally receive funding for projects and look for partners to deliver these. And I spent a lot of time on the internet scouring, finding those partnership calls from INGOs. Some of them are really complex and a very high barrier to entry. This turns that on its head. And the idea was that local actors convene first to agree what they want from the international sector, and they issue their own reverse call for proposals. This didn't go as far as we would have liked. It was in a complex closing civic space environment where we were trying it out. But the team there really wants to share those lessons and hope that we can find some new teams to take that idea forward. Completely re-engineers how we're funded, how we're resourced, and how civil society can work. So RINGO is seeking more opportunities in that prototype. The Decolonizing Advisory Service, WACSI has led that, and they're creating a web-based platform which creates basically a matchmaking service between experts in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and those INGOs who want to decolonize. So it's not dominated by northern white, quite frankly, consultants giving that advice. It's by people who are rooted in that system and in expertise. It will be an excellent knowledge center, and WACSI is hosting the design, scale up, and implementation of that. Two more very quickly, actually three more. Untying Aid was a team that was really focused on a policy aspect where bilateral funders, no matter what they've said, are still funding primarily through their domestic INGOs because of the assumption that that's easier to do, that it's less risky and more and more efficient for donors. This challenges that and asks bilaterals to end tied aid, dispelling those myths. And it also asks INGOs to let go of their privilege, to assume that they should be getting the first crack at that international funding and being the intermediaries. The Global Fund for Community Foundations will be now leading a grassroots campaign to end the practice of tied aid. And I hope lots of people will join in on that, including those who you might assume would not want to. So that's a call to everyone here on this call. The participatory grant making. If you're a funder, that's a very familiar phrase. If you're an INGO, not so much. If you're a feminist funder, you're doing it. It's already very much in the lexicon, but the prototype tested out how Southern civil society and Northern actors, perhaps not in some of the PGM spaces, can use this as a way to transform power dynamics and fulfill their potential by creating a much more mutual system of support through participatory grant making, where there's joint decision making around expenditure of funds. There's a set of principles that have been developed and tested and transformed trade in the UK. NORSAC and Ghana are going to host an ongoing learning community to try and scale this approach. And I think that's really exciting, really practical, and lots of lessons to be shared there. And finally, the Pledge for Change. Many of you will be familiar with this. We had the privilege of working with the Pledge on developing new accountability mechanisms, bottom-up accountability mechanisms. Those will be tested this year by Adesso, and RINGO will work with Adesso and the Pledge to extract the lessons from that to see how we can apply that in more and varied contexts. So that's really exciting. I think it's worth summing up several initiatives that emerged from RINGO that we hadn't expected. There is a new funding and innovation platform called One World Together that two RINGO Lab members created, Chibwe and Nikki, who I think are here on this call. There's a community of practice that has been working on organizational development and shifting power. A community of practice on innovative M&E came out of the RINGO Lab. There, if you want to join their Facebook group and share in those discussions, you can. There have been Francophone community discussions on decolonizing, recognizing that the decolonizing arguments have been really centered in the Anglophone community. And we also support some Ukrainian-led discussions where they were seeing the whole bad part of the system being replicated in the context of that, of the conflict and the emergency. And we tried to bring some of the RINGO lessons and asks to that situation in live real time. oops, I've lost, sorry. I don't know why that stopped sharing. Apologies. Final slide. Key messages that came out of all of this at the end of our 2 years in the Learning Festival. Now, our Learning Festival is 4 days long, so I'm only sharing 4 lessons, but these ones stand out for me. Demand is as important as supply. We set out to reimagine the INGO, but we also found through our prototypes that we need to also strengthen the demand for change and the systems that are needed. So confidence and calling out from national and local civil societies, what you want from the international sector is just as important. Secondly, there is no blueprint, right? So many INGOs say, okay, just give me a checklist of what I want to do. I've heard several boards say that to us. There is not a single blueprint. We need to be contextual, and we need to be quite holistic in our approach. We can ask the right questions, and I'm working on some of those tools now, but we need to do that a bit differently. Transformation requires intentionality, leadership and action. I think that intentionality is really important. It's creating the space for transformation, the time, and saying, we are going to do this. It's very easy to slip back into old habits. Priorities always overturn innovation quite often because you're just busy in emergency mode constantly. We need that leadership towards action and with real intention at the leadership level. And finally, what we learned from Ringo is creating these mutual spaces where we can be really honest about what's not working is so important. Create with diverse colleagues, not just people who might look like me, and so on. So what are those safe spaces? And that's where our strategy comes into play. In summary, our work is not done. I will hand it back to Jim.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for that, wonderful rundown of the journey so far. And when you called on ICSC, Miriam actually dropped into the chat. She dropped her email to say, if you want to join the compliance prototype, just click on that email and reach out to her. And we got a very interesting question from Margaret asking, how can we join some of these prototypes? And please, Margaret, that's a very wonderful question. And I can see many other participants reacting favorably to that. We will be, sharing a poll at the end where you can let us know how you want to engage, and we will reach out to you specifically to make sure that, you join in the right spaces that you're most comfortable with. And of course, we are happy to be with you on this journey. And moving on to Ringo Phase 2, it will be exciting to know that, yes, we are all welcome on board Ringo Phase 2. And this is how the journey hopefully looks like for us all. Actually thinking through the process, we are actually going to be revisiting, how we can actually engage. And we'll be carrying out, a study collating perspectives on the engagement of, actors in national CSOs with, donors, and how that transactional process or how those interactions have actually been like over the years. Then we will be having an engagement plan where we will be defining with the different actors how, we should move forward over the 2 years. Of course, influencing is key on our agenda, and we want you to be part of the process that together we will influence INGO boards, and of course, influencing funders. If these are key areas that you're interested in sharing insight, in engaging in some of these conversations, do let us know and join the caravan. And let's continue on this influencing agenda, which my colleagues, Charles and Jenny will be talking about in a very short while. And of course, towards the end of the 2 years, so sometime in 2024, we will be convening to look at what has transpired between 2023 and 2024, and learning lessons from that, to excite ourselves, learn from those, and inspire the way forward. And of course, looking at how this, journey will unfold, the West Africa Civil Society Institute is actually going to be, the host of RINGO Phase 2 and the West Africa Civil Society Institute, your preferred partner for development, in the region, is actually based in Accra, Ghana, and we are happily taking on the leadership role for RINGO Phase 2, and of course, working with all of you. WACSI will be leading and coordinating this process to ensure that together we drive the systems change we want. And of course, we can't do this without you. That is why we are happy to hear or to read questions like, how can we get engaged? And so on the next slide, we are actually going to be inviting, this is why WACSI, actually stands as that preferred leader, or favorite leader in this case. We have that, WACSI has that experience as an influencer, within the civil society space. It connects with actors across different countries in West Africa and across the sub-Saharan African region. And of course, we are extending, particularly thanks to RINGO, to connect with actors, in Bangladesh, in South Asian countries, South American countries, and across the globe to ensure that we gather the right voices on the change we want and work with these actors sharing their voices to design the kind of change we want and work through the process of getting the change we want. And of course, we work to strengthen the demand side of the conversation. That is actually pivotal on WACSI's 2023-2027 strategy. And WACSI ensures that those affected by these issues have a voice. And to drive this agenda forward, WACSI, being the host, will be working with a core team made up of independent consultants from across the world, Africa, Europe, ensuring that we engage rapidly and constantly with actors, working, of course, with RIO's partners, the best design thinking actors on the globe at this particular time. And we are really proud, of engaging on this lofty journey with RIO's partners, the best partner that you can collaborate with to ensure that we drive such an agenda. And of course, you, social lab members who have made this journey this fruitful with the wonderful fruits we are harvesting now. But the journey is not over. It's just beginning. And that is why we are looking at 2023, 2024 for more fruitful engagements with you and those who want to join us. If you want to join this caravan in whatever capacity, send an email to info@waxi.org or info@ringoproject.org, and we will be happy to respond to your inquiries and get you involved as actively as possible. But remember, stay tuned, because at the end of this discussion, we will be sharing a short poll where you can let us know how to get in touch with you to best continue this conversation. I would like to call on my colleague Rebecca from RIO's Partners to, continue with this wonderful discussion and let us know what's in store for us in this process. Rebecca?
Oh, thank you, Jim. Thank you for taking us into this description of Phase 2. And you'll have noticed from the way that Deborah talked about Phase 1 that we've been using metaphors and images and art to help carry the intention of Phase 1. And we're going to be doing exactly the same with Phase 2. So I'm going to take us into a short imaginative exercise to share with you the metaphor for Phase 2. And as you remember, the R in RINGO stands for reimagining. So the power of imagination is key to how we work. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or to soften your gaze if you prefer. Imagine you're standing in a small field. This field belongs to a family that grows most of their own food. They've been growing food here for several generations, using traditions passed down from grandmothers and grandfathers, and their parents and their grandparents before them. You look around at the fruit trees in their small orchard, at the abundant, juicy vegetables growing all around you, and at the strong trees providing shade to a few cows over there in the corner of the field. You turn to the family and you ask them, what's your secret? How do you produce this amazing quality food? The young child of that family grins with delight and silently points to the soil beneath your feet. So you bend down and plunge your hands into the earth. Wow, it feels incredible. Soft and moist and rich. Looking where you dug your hands in, I'll go back a little bit. You bend right down and plunge your hands into the earth. Wow, it feels incredible. Soft and moist and rich. Looking where you dug your hands in, you can see that the soil is moving. Dozens of earthworms there working the soil. Now you get right down on your hands and knees and look more closely. You start to notice tiny white threads in the soil. And you ask the grandmother squatter you, what are these? She explains about mycelial networks, thousands of fungal connections in the soil that carry information and nutrients between the roots of the plants and produce more soil. The trick is not to disturb these networks, but to allow them to work their magic. And now you can't resist. Your face is right next to the soil, so you lower it still further and breathe in deeply. A smell of incredible freshness, almost sweetness, overwhelms your senses. Amazing! Gradually, you raise your face again, sit back on your heels, look around at the beautiful fruit and vegetables once more, and slowly stand up with that earthy smell still lingering in your nostrils. And so when you're ready, please open your eyes again and return to this Zoom reality. This is what we're attending to in phase 2, the soil. Our work now, especially with funders and INGO boards, which Jenny and Charles will speak about in a moment, it's all about improving the soil so that the entire INGO system is more ready for and more responsive to fruitful change. We'll work the soil so that the small orchard of 8 prototypes that Deborah's spoken about, planted in phase 1, can continue to grow. And so that any new initiatives arising from RINGO phase 2 and arising from multiple other groups of people in this ecosystem can grow strong, healthy, and be sustainable. And we, RINGO, are one of many, many farmers tending the soil. Some of this work will be quietly influential and not very visible, but it's designed to bear visible fruit, vegetables, and growth. And a lot of our influencing work in phase 2 will be extremely visible. We're going to make loads of presentations. We're going to have regular RINGO Lab community meetings. We're going to have more open house meetings like this one. And of course, another learning festival to amplify this work and connect to the wider ecosystem. So another way to express this is through sharing a theory of change. And I'm hoping that my connection is strong enough to support doing that. So Rios has a theory of change, and it's influenced by several other actors in the in civil society and working in the field of monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And when we shared it with the RINGO team, it made a lot of sense for helping to explain our movement from phase 1 into phase 2. I'm going to talk us through it briefly. It starts with developing agency, capacity, understanding, relationships, and commitments. And of course, when we started with phase 1, we had 55 people who started with us at the beginning, and they brought loads of agency, capacity, and understanding, as well as a strong sense of commitment to change. But what we were able to do in phase 1 was make that collective, a shared sense of agency, collective capacity and understanding, stronger relationships and trust amongst all of the different actors involved, and a shared sense of commitment. And where that took us to was being able to develop a series of innovations, niche innovations, which, as Deborah explained to us, were the seeds that we planted that are now becoming these small fruit trees. And this is where people try things out. It's a very experimental phase. 95 people were part of that process, and it helps us see what works and what doesn't work, and to keep iterating. But these seeds need better soil. And this is where we come in with the story that I've just shared and the metaphor. This is the place where we think about system shift, where we start to attend to the transitions and we start to attend to the conditions for change. So if the seeds land in poor soil, or if they land in the same soil that we've been consistently offering before, they're not going to bear new fruit and they're not going to grow stronger. You can't see that on the slide yet, but it is coming, I promise. The next phase, and so that's really where we're focusing right now, is on system shift, attending to the conditions. And where that begins to take us is into system transition. And system transition is about connecting what we're doing with what people across the ecosystem are doing, so that we start to scale, collectively scale, scaling up for influence, scaling out for reach, and scaling deep for real impact. And ultimately, what we're looking for here is system transformation. We're looking for a lasting shift that prevents snapback and enables us to start to chart some of the changes that we've been able to navigate together. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask Leslie if you're able to just share that full set of components of the theory of change so that we've got them on our screen.
It will be coming up shortly.
Brilliant, thank you. So there we have all 5 aspects, and it looks, the way I just described it, sounds quite linear. It's this, then that, then that. But of course, there are multiple cycles between them. When we're working on system shift, we need to go back and work on agency, capacity, understanding, relationships, and commitments, and keep nurturing those. We need to keep working on the niche innovations so that they grow stronger and stronger, from these sapling fruit trees into great big trees that can bear fruit. And you can see here, we're completely embedded in the wider ecosystem of change initiatives. The small system shifts that Ringo can start to navigate by tending to the soil need a much wider ecosystem of initiatives to be able to navigate system transition and to become system transformation, which is where we see change across the landscape. Thanks so much, Les. So I'm going to pass that on to, I think to Jenny first, and then to Charles to take us into some of the detail of what that's going to look like.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Les, if you could just share the slides again. We've got a couple of slides just on our focal areas. So, hi everyone. So we're looking at systems change. We're looking at how to really have an impact across the whole system. That is our sort of purpose in the Ringo project. And of course, you have to sort of work out where you're going to focus your energy. So the core team met together a couple of months ago now and really did some strategizing, which you're getting the results of now. And we decided that actually, in order to really have the best impact on the system around the INGO, around the global civil society entity, if you like, then we really need to look at two sort of power bases in particular, as well as continuing the conversation with, of course, all our allies and actors in the broader system. We're going to really focus in on two communities. One is working with funders, and I'll tell you why in a second. And then the other is working in particular with INGO boards, so the governance of international NGOs. That is not to say that those two communities are exclusively who we're going to work with, as we've described already. But why work with funders? So Les, if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. Basically, all through phase one, funding, unsurprisingly to everyone on this call, funding and funders and the sort of role that they play in the broader system came up as a consistent theme, a consistent sort of observation that actually that community has an awful lot of influence on how the broader system works. So it feels really, really important to continue to engage with the funder community. There are some real radicals in the funder community, and we've been working with a number of those players through our funder action pod, who many on this call will have heard of or be connected with. That has been a community of peers who've come together sort of regularly throughout the phase one, and we'd really love to continue that conversation. We'd also love to really broaden out that group and create this peer learning space, or nurture this peer learning space, so that those who are really trying to bring about change in the funding community can get mutual support, can learn from each other's practice, and can crucially learn from the RINGO sort of experience so far, the broader social lab and community, and the prototypes that we've been playing with, as Deborah's described. So we're really looking to maximize that learning, share that with our funder colleagues, and look at how we can work together to bring about a transformation in funder practice and policy around civil society and around who is funded, how they're funded, and how sort of power and identity plays out within those spaces. So I'm going to leave it there, hand to Charles, who's going to tell you a little bit about how we're going to work with INGO boards and why we're doing that before we wrap up.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jenny. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Accra. So like Jenny said, and other colleagues have said before, we identified these two key stakeholders or decision makers, which are quite pivotal in shaping how our system actually functions currently. And so the focus is on influencing INGO boards, but really it's about working with members of these boards, whether existing or previous members, to really look at how we can get conversations about systems change to be front and center within board meetings and board operations. What we've noticed is that there's a lot of conversations at the senior management level that does not trickle down or trickle up, should I say, into board meetings. So what we're planning to do is to start by gathering some evidence, what we call evidence for influencing, making sure that we are bringing the community along. We want to get perspectives and experiences from national and local civil society about their own views on how we could engage INGO boards and what they think INGO boards should be focused on and the kind of issues that they should be pushing. We'll be doing a lot of convening, connecting, and strategizing. And so just like the Funder Action Pod, which we've already created in phase one, we're planning to create a board action pod. But not only that, recognizing that there are other existing platforms, we also plan to leverage with partners, for example, ICSC, for example, other platforms in North America, in Mexico, in Latin America, Asia, There are several other INGO and NGO platforms like Bond, Pathos, etc. How do we leverage on this to really identify specific board members from INGOs who can help shape this agenda so that we can create what we call the influencing tactics. And it's an opportunity in these spaces to really identify what the barriers to change has been, really get down to the causal reasons why we still have these very systemic challenges, and really unlock and really propose solutions at that level. We recognize that for this to work, there must be meaningful participation. And that means we need to get representation from INGOs, of course, whether it's a federated institution, we have to navigate some of these complexities, and also members from the international HQ boards, but also INGOs that are registered nationally. Board members of such INGOs are critical. And so we'll be leveraging a lot on the INGO forums. In many of these countries, we have INGO forums, we have councils to really target existing, former, and experienced members. And we also recognize that within the social lab and the community that we have now, there's a lot of individuals, colleagues, passionate about this issue that we will also be working with. Les, the next slide, thanks. So another thing we realize is that for us to work with boards, we need to look at capacity issues. It's not about building any capacity in this sense, but it's about strengthening capacity. So most time board members ask us if we have certain tools or guidelines for board members to really cultivate or initiate engagement on creating systems change. And these tools are hardly available. And so these are things we'll be working on. We're also looking at providing advisory support, technical support, and not necessarily us as individuals who are part of the RINGO core team, but more of peer-to-peer engagement across various boards. And then we recognize that there's going to be the change champions. How do we nurture members of this of the action pods, people who are involved in this, to inspire and influence their peer boards and organizations? So we're going to support the champions to push this agenda. And of course, we recognize that this process itself, one of the most interesting and essential things about this is that we need to document and the learning that comes from the process, but also document the contributions and the impact that the process will make. So there'll be a lot of learning, a lot of reflection, and a lot of dissemination of the outcomes from this process. So with respect to INGO boards, these are the things that we are thinking about, and we really welcome feedback and inputs into this process. So thank you very much. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Charles, and I really appreciate the appeal that we should share inputs to this process. And you have the email info@ringoproject.org, where you can share that feedback, which is very much needed. And some very interesting engagements are going on in the chat. I hope we can see them. I can't read all, but please, Osai Ojigo says this is a good initiative about targeting boards so that as owners of the organization can own the process and support INGO leaders. And Jenny says, as well as continuing to engage with the wider community in forging the learning agenda that we can offer, at RINGO. We would love the wider community of allies, as well as the RINGO Social Lab members, to be actively engaging and, most importantly, suggesting. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really more about you engaging and suggesting and raising important questions that can help the team to make sure that this process takes us to the much needed end. At this moment, we will be looking at how we can actually engage in this process. And Leslie, I'll kindly invite you to share with us the slides that really gives us some insight on ways of engaging in the RINGO process moving forward. If you are a founder or an INGO board member, you can get engaged or involved in any of the action pods, share your insights, Share, the lessons you've been learning, the experiences you've been gathering along your journey. If you've experienced any barriers or challenges, share with pals and colleagues so that together we can really have answers to some of the burning questions that we are faced with at this time. If you're a senior leader in the sector, consider helping, to embed or pilot any of the prototypes that have been, shared with us, within this session. And if you have any insightful prototypes that you think can be considered or explored within this journey, feel free to share with the team. And of course, with Social Lab members, we will explore ways of embedding these and piloting them. And if you are from a national civil society organization, in Sub-Saharan Africa, in South America, in Asia, get involved in our pop-up sessions with other community members. Join any of the prototype engagements. Charles talked about documenting. What are those wonderful experiences you've been having? What are the learning journeys you've gone across? Feel free to share with us, because for these 2 years, we'll focus on documenting these experiences and ensuring that we learn or derive rich lessons from them. And to all of us here and to our colleagues who could not make it for this session, and if you are watching this particular session on YouTube after this session, you are part of us. Join our regular convenings and ensure that together we offer a community of people who can support the movement for change. The change is all about us. It is the change we want. And if we want that change to happen, we have to be involved in one way or the other to make the change to happen. And Leslie, the next slide, please. Thank you very much, colleagues. We are almost wrapping up. And to do that, we just want to get our impressions of how, we've experienced this particular session. Thank you for sharing, how colleagues can contact us. If you want to reach out to us, send an email to info@ringoproject.org and we will definitely respond to you. My colleague Leslie will be sharing a link with us, and for us to just share how we experienced this particular session, and that will give us a sense of how it has actually gone for us. And also there is equally another link that, with a Google Form link that we can click on and share insights, share some feedback, and most importantly, identify how we want to engage in this process moving forward. The link has been shared in the chat, and we very much look forward to your responses, to those few questions that we have there. I'm sure we are taking 1 or 2 minutes to fill that form.
Jim, I've already shared the link to the Mentimeter. I'll also share it again.
Okay,
for the words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So a Mentimeter link is being shared again in the chat. Kindly click on it. Thank you very much, Leslie, for that wonderful prompt. Kindly click on it and share with us, in a few words, how do you feel about Ringo's strategy for phase 2? You have a few options to share with us. And we are looking forward, of course, when the words start coming in, Leslie will project and we will have a sense of what we, alongside other colleagues, are sharing. I'm sure we've all been able to access the Mentimeter link. And here we are. These are exciting, excited, ambitious, challenging, a bit decarved, well thought through, powerful, optimistic, great, energized, empowered. Thank you so much for having these coming. We really look forward to more of such feedback in the days, in the months ahead. And of course, we will interrogate these perspectives further to make sure that as much as possible, phase 2 is even as responsive as we really want it to be for us. And also, like we said earlier, there is equally a Google Form link where we can share, some information about ourselves so that we can engage, we can reach out to you. You can express how you want to engage in the journey moving forward, and we can reach out to you to really ensure that we stay connected with you in the most appropriate ways. Thank you very much, Leslie, for sharing the link again with us in the chat. And we can take a minute to just respond to those few questions that have been shared with us. Again, as always, thanks so much. Viveka, thank you. Great meeting and updates. Thank you, Viveka, for the feedback. We really do appreciate that. And it's always great staying with you. I can see Deborah smiling. I can see Rebecca smiling. And of course, I'll just have to pick one of them randomly. I can see Janet, with all smiles. Chibwe, it's very great as always to have you. Deborah, one last message for this wonderful audience. Over 179 of us have been here. Yes, Deborah.
You are the change. Don't wait for someone else to do it.
Great. You are the change. We are the change. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up, but we just want to take, a quick picture. So if you are okay with turning on your video, please, the comms team will be taking a shot, very quickly. Gideon, Fifi, are you there to guide us? Kindly just turn on your camera and put on a Ringo smile, of course. You know what the Ringo smile looks like, don't you? It should be better than mine. Fifi, are you there, please? Ed Rekosh, yes, I love your smile. That's the best Ringo smile we have this afternoon. Yes, Fifi, are you there, please?
Yes, I'm there. So please, on the count of 3, and then we can all smile, and then I'll take the photo. So 1, 2, 3. I'll take another one. 1, 2, 3. Please feel free to wave if you want to.
But the wave does not mean
3.
Don't get into philosophical debates about whether it's the same person or not. But one thing
thank you all
thank you very
much.
Lucy,
it's so good to see you. Nikki Banks, it's so good to see you. Tosca, your smile was so contagious. Ladies and gentlemen, let us stay engaged. Ringo, it's all about you. It's more about you and the change we want for the sector. Mohammed Awal, it's great to be with you once again. Mustafa Fai, toujours un plaisir d'être avec vous. Et nous souhaitons d'être toujours avec vous. And of course, to the wonderful interpretation team, Serge Daly and colleagues, you have made this conversation possible to our followers in French and Spanish. It is always great collaborating with you, and we look forward to even more fruitful engagements in the year 2023. Why not 2024, as we look forward to pregnant moms in the days ahead. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon, and stay open to receive emails from the Ringo team, and stay in touch with us by writing or reaching out through the email info@ringoproject.org. It has been wonderful being with you this wonderful afternoon. Let's stay engaged to bring about the change we want. Thank you and bye-bye.